I'm Richard Hefner, your host on The Open Mind. And once again today, my guest is the distinguished winner of the 1986 Nobel Peace Prize, Elie Wiesel, writer, historian, witness, survivor, and conscience. Now, it isn't ever possible for me to invite Mr. Wiesel to grace this table without making our theme, writ large, of course, the moral responsibilities of a private person. Nor should it be otherwise. In his speech accepting the Nobel Peace Prize, Mr. Wiesel has noted that we are all survivors who should know that every moment is a moment of grace, every hour an offering. Not to share them would mean to betray them. Our lives no longer belong to us alone, they belong to all those who need us desperately. So that the questions before us today, each day, must be where and when and how to share our blessings, our moments of grace. And perhaps today we can go even further than the last time Mr. Wiesel was here in deliberating upon the practical issues that demand of each of us moral responses. And that will be our theme today, Mr. Wiesel. It always is, I guess, because of your words, whatever we do must be measured in moral terms. And I wondered when the Pope was here in the United States and spoke about sanctuary for those who would migrate to this country, perhaps illegally. I wondered what your response to that issue is in our times. Is it a moral one?
It is a moral issue, and therefore I actually gave the keynote address to the first Sanctuary Conference in Arizona 2 or 3 years ago. Then I made some research about the word and the concept of sanctuary. Strangely enough, in the Bible, a sanctuary is offered to criminal people, meaning those who involuntarily, unwittingly have committed a crime, mainly murder. And therefore the sanctuary was for those who have committed murder. Today a sanctuary is needed for those who are innocent, who are victims. And it is, to me, a moral question, not a political question, because I am not a political person. I have the luxury, as you have probably, not to be involved in politics in this respect, meaning what we have to do is to answer morally, even to politicians. To me, people who are in need of a haven, of a refuge, it's inconceivable for this country of ours, which is so rich, so wealthy, and so strong, to refuse them a sanctuary. Of course, the law here is political prisoners may get refuge or sanctuary in America, whereas criminal refugees do not get sanctuary. And my feeling is a father who cannot feed his children, a mother who cannot care for her children, they are also victims of human rights, just as the father or the mother of a political prisoner.
Yes, but I want to pick up this dichotomization that you pose, political but not moral, moral but not necessarily political. How can you make the separation?
I don't. I think reality does, in my stead. There are political factors, considerations, and I don't pay attention to them. Example, after all, there are 500,000 or 600,000 refugees who need sanctuary in our country. And I say, okay, we are 220 million, will be 220.5 million. For a politician from those places, for instance, from Arizona or from anywhere, who suffer from economic problems, they will say, in that case, if they come here, they will create economic problems. And they have constituencies, they have voters, they have elections every 2 years, every 4 years. I have no elections. I don't have to go and justify myself to the voter. My elector is like your elector. The one in your case is somebody who opens your book, or in my case, somebody who opens my book.
Yet, you say you don't have to run, you don't have to appeal to voters. But don't you have to, as a citizen, vote? And won't your judgment be made on the basis of how close a political person comes to paralleling what you believe is a moral position?
Absolutely. I would only vote for those whose ideas reflect mine, or at least are close to mine.
Well then, how realistic, to use your word, is it to say that your involvement is moral, but not political?
Well, let's say political not in the etymological sense of the word, but that we work for the polis, for the city. Today politics is something else. Politics today is calculation. Politics today is all kinds of combinations and machinations and manipulations and so forth. The word doesn't have the same meaning anymore.
But the word still has a meaning in terms of acting out what you consider a moral position. You have a moral judgment to make on each of these issues, don't you?
Absolutely.
And what will you do with that moral judgment to turn it into reality?
Personally?
Yes.
Well, I speak up. You are very generous and very nice. You invite me to speak up, and I do.
But then I don't see this nice flip. I am not political. I am moral in my approach. For instance, let me ask what you thought of the Pope's visit while he was here, and he addressed himself to issues that, of course, surface in a political sense.
Yes, but again, when I say that I have the luxury of not being involved in political affairs, but I do pass judgment on political affairs, obviously. It's easy, I know it's easy for me to say that, because I am not involved in politics. But in saying that, I already judge or condemn or praise certain people who are involved in politics. Those who make the right judgment are good for me, those who make the wrong judgment are wrong for me.
How correct do you think it is, how proper do you think it is in this nation, either for a moral spokesman, as you are, or a church spokesman, as the Pope is, or as his bishops are, to pronounce their own individual judgments, or the judgment of the church upon issues that come before us in a political way?
Well, there's a difference between the Pope and me. The Pope speaks on behalf of the Church. I speak only on my own behalf. I represent no one. I represent really only the few books that I have written, the few characters that I have created, and probably the person in me whose judgment I value. It's not the same thing.
Have you any sympathy for those who would say, Wiesel, and then maybe in the next sentence say the Pope and the Church, and in the next sentence talk about this minister or that, should all stay away from those issues that ultimately in this nation become political issues?
Oh, not at all. I think we should, quite the opposite, introduce our concerns into the political field. Otherwise you will have politics without outsiders. And I would like to be not an outsider in politics. They need to speak up. I would like to quote Shakespeare, and not misquote, but quote, not plagiarize, but quote, I mean. Those who spoke about Shakespeare or Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, why not? Why not elevate the debate? Why not elevate the whole discourse, the political discourse?
But does it elevate the debate, or does it put it on a plane that is very difficult for a political nation, as America is, to deal with it? And again, I come back to the statements that the Pope made. In terms of sanctuary, you and he, your statements both are on precisely the same plane, it seems to me. But there probably are other areas where moral concerns impose themselves upon politics in a way that must drive politicians to distraction.
And the other way around. They pay us back.
Yes, I'm sure you're correct.
Let's take an example, Nicaragua. Is it a political question or a moral question? Now, to many politicians, of course, it's a political question. We cannot afford having a communist country, a communist regime in Nicaragua. But this in itself is already a moral question. It's not that simple, of course. It's much more complex than it sounds.
If, as you say, it is already a moral question, then your judgment upon it, your position, must have a great deal of weight in this, or you want it to have much weight.
My good friend, you know that I'm much more modest than that. I know that it doesn't really. Occasionally, here and there, people listen, but those who should listen don't.
But if you speak because you want people to listen. Is that not true?
Absolutely.
What do you want them to hear in terms of Nicaragua?
In Nicaragua? Where I